Tibet is known as the roof of the world. If you ever look at a map airline routes, you will notice something strange. Almost nothing are there any commercial flights that dare to hover in the sky of Tibet. Why is it like that? So, is there anything scary about this land? To the point where the pilot had to take cover? Tibet has witnessed disasters, terrible plane crash or not. And if want to set foot in the legendary land, hey, how to go Tibet is a place where just mentioning it makes you feel good. Enough to make people feel the mystery. With an average altitude of more than 4,500 m above sea level, Tibet is not just a spiritual destination of millions of Buddhists but also a huge challenge for nature and people. The most prominent of these is Mount Everest, a symbol of the summit high. But Everest is not the summit. The only thing that makes pilots afraid. There are many mountain peaks besides. Different. These peaks are not only high but also creates turbulent air currents. Extremely dangerous. When commercial aircraft flying at altitudes from 9,000 to 12,000 m, they still facing strong winds blows over the mountain tops, creating a phenomenon we call turbulence air. These vortexes of air can cause the plane to shake violently like you are sitting on a rocking chair furnace in the storm. One small mistake, one moment of loss of control and the consequences can be a disaster. The higher you go, the less the air is thinner to the point atmospheric pressure is much lower than other areas of the Earth. This directly affects dynamic performance, aircraft mechanics and the ability to handle situations emergency. Thin air, force the lift of the aircraft wing is reduced, causing maintaining a steady altitude becomes difficult more. If the plane has technical problems, pilots often have to descend below 3,000 m for safety, but at Tibet, this is almost impossible exam. Under the sky are mountains and rugged plateau, no place is enough flat runway for emergency landing. Can you imagine how the pilot feels? When looking down and seeing only peaks, sharp mountains and deep valleys, a prospect no one wants to face. In addition, Tibet also has canyons. Mountains and valleys make the terrain more complex than ever. One of the typical examples are Yaluzongbo, one of the deepest canyons in the world. And China is planning to build hydroelectric power here. The big rivers originated in Tibet through the narrow valleys and create geographic networks, looks like a giant maze. If the plane needs to make an emergency landing, an area flat here is almost impossible. These canyons are not only geographical challenges but also create unusual winds, make work difficult, controlling the plane becomes more difficult. For these reasons, pilots fly over the West. Organs require special skills and concentration. Absolute neutrality. Flights over this area requires precision. Every second, every meter. Navigation system and the aircraft's radar must be fully operational. Good, and pilots are always ready to deal with sudden changes. But right away, even with modern technology, no one wants to venture over an area where everything can get worse in an instant. That is the main reason why the company's airlines often choose to avoid Tibet, find safer ways to ensure safety, ensure passengers and crew. So the first element has been determined. It is the terrain. If the terrain is a nightmare, the weather in Tibet is an invisible enemy, ready to challenge any pilot dares to fly over here. Tibet is not only famous for its scenery, majestic scenery, but also harsh weather, constantly changing and unpredictable. Flying over Tibet is like playing a game lesson with nature, where you don't never know what the next card will be. One of the most dangerous is strong winds due to special geographical location, organs affected by wind currents extremely powerful with speeds that can exceed 200 km per hour. These winds are not only strong but also difficult to predict, creating areas mountain turbulence as they hit the top of the Himalayas. Sitting on the plane, everything was peaceful and suddenly the plane shaking as if by an invisible hand, push up, push down. That's the feeling when flying through turbulence gas. A typical example is the accident of Priestad Overseas Flight 911 Airways in 1966 near Mount Fuji of Japan. The pilot changed course to sightseeing passengers but unfortunately encountered must be strong wind with speed over 110 km per hour. As a result, the plane was torn apart and killed all passengers and crew. The plating group. That is an example in the area. Different. But in Tibet, the winds similar to appear frequently, especially in winter and spring, making this area becomes a danger zone. In the sky, in addition to strong winds, Tibet also has to facing extreme weather phenomena as snowstorms, fog and rain large. In winter, the temperature can drop below -30 degrees Celsius, cold enough to cause you feel the coldness go through. Imagine. At high altitudes, the temperature is still lower, causing freezing on the wings of the aircraft, reducing performance aerodynamics and increased risk of accidents. Long-term fog continues to be a problem especially in valley areas and plateau. When the fog covers, the range the pilot's vision may be reduced to near as zero, makes it difficult to locate location, or orientation becomes extremely difficult. Towels. Unexpected storms sometimes accompany following lightning further increases the risk. So Tibet has had disasters before. Any plane crash or not? Answer is rare but not impossible, yes. However, information about the accidents, the plight in Tibet is not widely publicized. Spacious. Partly because the area is under China's tight control. Partly because airlines often avoid flying over here, reduces the risk of an incident tried. According to public sources, is there any large commercial aircraft recorded live in the airspace of the West Tibetan. This is understandable because, as explained, the airlines often choose other routes to avoid hazardous terrain and weather. However, neighboring areas such as the Himalayas and other highlands witnessed several accidents related to terrain and weather. Additionally, there are some unofficial reports. Awareness that accidents have occurred relating to military aircraft or helicopters ascending in the Tibet region, especially in military exercises of China. However, on the sensitivity of politics and military, this information is not usually widely publicized. Tibet is home to many bases. Important military and airspace strictly controlled by the Chinese military country. If an accident occurs, the possibility it is best that they are kept secret to avoid causing harm. Note. However, there is no concrete evidence how about major accidents involving regarding civil aircraft in Tibet. Article. This partly shows the caution of airlines have helped reduce risk. In addition to terrain and weather, there are also other factors that make commercial flights trade rarely pass through Tibet. One of it is politically and militarily limited. Tibet is a sensitive area of China. Aviation infrastructure in the West Tibet is a big problem. This area has very few airports, and existing airports often ill-equipped to handle emergency situations. Finally, economic factors also play a role. Important. Airlines are always looking for how to optimize flight routes to save money, fuel and time. Fly over the West Organs are not only dangerous but also useless. Economically efficient. The aircraft must fly at high altitudes to avoid mountain peaks, easy to consume more fuel. Meanwhile, flights via India, Nepal or China are usually safer and more economical. So unless there is a reason in particular, airlines do not choose to fly over Tibet. So if you want to go to Tibet, you have to go by train. How? A popular way is still to go by plane, but that is La Airport Ganga, the main gateway to Tibet. However, this airport is at an altitude of 3,600 m, that is much lower than the height of mountain peaks and located in an area different. But 3,600 m is enough to make this as one of the highest airports in the world. Flights to this place usually originate from big cities of China such as Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu, Xi'an. And if you want one slow down and take in the scenery, Go train is a great option. The ship is equipped with an oxygen supply system. Help passengers adapt to the altitude and you will experience the feeling of going through another world. For those who love Phi Lu, traveling by road is a challenging but also very rewarding choice. Memorable. Thanks for watching this story. If you find it interesting, you can press the channel registration button, turn on the bell, inform and share. And now God.